settle down, please? Manoj, can you help us? Hello. Hello. Can I request the guests to please settle down? We are beginning with our first technical session on corporate governance vision for New India. Dear friends, let me begin with this by introducing myself with you. My name is Dr. Neeraj Gupta, and I look after the School of Corporate Governance and Public Policy and also the Ministry of Corporate Affairs two key initiatives. One on Independent Directors Data Bank and another the National Corporate Social Responsibility Awards. I take this pleasure in introducing the distinguished panel with you. Mr. Inderdeep Singh Dhariwal Saab, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, just sitting next to me. I would request if we welcome him with a clap. Towards extreme left, we have with us Professor Ashish Bhattacharya, who had been a professor at Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs and the founding director of the School of Corporate Governance. Sir has also served as Professor IIM Calcutta, the Group Director, Institute of Management Technology, Ghaziabad, and presently serving as Professor Emeritus with Shiv Nadar University and HCL Initiative in Delhi NCR. Dear friends, I could see some of you standing in the back. I would request if you can settle down, please, because the transaction of this panel is quite serious. I'm not requesting those who are outside, but at least those who are inside, I would like to have an active participation. Now, to begin with this, I have just a couple of words to say. India is a fast moving country in the developmental process. The ecosystem of the corporate governance has much changed since 1990, when the country has started focusing on visiting the frameworks on corporate governance we have. The Kumar Bangalam Birla Committee of 1999 set the footprints, which were followed by a number of committees which had been constituted as part of the reform process on corporate governance ecosystem. If we look at, friends, there are multiple phases which have happened before the Companies Act 2013 was instituted. And even after the introduction of this act, the reform process has not stopped. And there are a number of new regulatory initiatives have been taken at the level of Ministry of Corporate Affairs, at the level of Securities Exchange Board of India, and also the stock exchanges in India, for setting the tone of a framework which is an alignment with the frameworks evolving at the global level, so that it just not only help corporates to participate and contribute with a better corporate governance operating system, but also helps them addressing to their aspirations for the global investments, their aspirations to go global and partner with best in class institutions, so that we set a benchmark which is even much beyond than what regulatory institutions are expecting for. Setting up of Uday Kotak Committee by Security Exchange Board of India. The clause 49 and its replacement by listing obligation disclosure requirements by SEBI, adoption of global best practices on integrated reporting, on responsible business conduct, on environment, social, and governance aspects, which we were hearing during the inauguration, a couple of them which have added as milestones for setting and raising the benchmarks of corporate governance standards in India. There is a lot which this panel is going to discuss. We also will have two young Turks who have contributed their thoughts by way of participating and contributing the winning essays in the essay competition we organized at the national level for the young professionals. As Dr. Lata Suresh has mentioned during the inauguration, there was a phenomenal response, and the final winners have been identified after adopting a blind review process, having evaluations both at the institutional level as well as with the help of external efforts. But before I invite them to present their thoughts, I would request the chair of the session, Mr. Dhariwal, to please deliver his chairman's address. Over to you, sir. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. It's my privilege to be amongst you. And what Ms. Dr. Gupta has already given a detailed background, talks about all, including nature of corporate governance, history of it, and probably major ingredient in it. I won't be going for it. But one thing which I've been experiencing in last 7 days of celebration of this AKAM, probably I picked up words from our MOS. He indicated two things, that this is the time of 75 years for introspection also. Introspection with respect to what we were and what we have gone through, where should we be at the 100 years of the country's independent existence after 1947. And like in this particular thing, there was a reference that, this India was a bird of gold, not a golden bird. And that particular thing was without corporate governance. It was not also a nation. It was a composition of a number of states, princely states you can say, in all diverse situations and areas. Still it was prospering. And again, there was most of the time, there was no intervention from the government. There was no regulations also. Still, business flourished, and Indian net worth was equated to 1/4 of the rest of the world, which was substantial. It was, even the Romans used to call this as a gold dump or a black hole for the gold, which attracts this precious metal from around the world and absorbs it, doesn't give it back. If it is, this is what it was for thousands of years from Indus Valley onwards. This indicates that the trade was the prime medium for the country's recognition, worth, and probably identity in the world. It was, so the power was trade. It was not political power. And the trade again, its exchange of things was not merely economic. It was also extended in cultural sphere as well as education. People used to come here to get themselves educated. It was spiritual also. India was ambassador for a number of religions to the rest of the world. And probably this is where the ethics came into the business and the trade. And most of the things, if you start from, all those rock edicts from Ashoka period or even earlier, you will get a mention of all wealthy persons doing the welfare work. This is how that means, in the modern concept, what is business? I was told business is your loss is my profit is business. It can't be I earn profit without anybody incurring loss. So it's not mutual, it's one side. And you might be, you can experientially imagine also, like after independence, this Western style of business that basically is accumulation of wealth. You take raw material, convert it, and present it back with all appreciations and basically in cost and even in the nature of goods also. So basically, earning money is the only purpose for a business. And this is how it went on for a pretty long time or for century. And thereafter, in late 20th century, this concept came that investor need to be protected because the company, whatever it is doing, it is not per se guarding, and rather there was considered to be conflict of interest because investors is of diverse nature and mostly not educated about the business. And the owner of proprietor of business, that is what they were not stakeholders. So they were taking money, and the only relationship between the shareholder or the at that point in time stakeholder was exchange in term of value for money, that is return on investment. And if that is good, that was considered to be good enough. And as we saw failures in the business models, these corporate governance or the governance concept came in. And concept gradually grew with distribution of roles and responsibility, creating checks, and subsequently building it up on the roles of different formations, call it owners in the board of directors or governors. Then they were differentiated by like the financial sector that is being controlled, that is COE and COF. And then the independent director came in. So these were the methods how to improvise checks on these things. But subsequently, 2008 onwards, when we realized there were a number of formations, business formations, those were very successful. But then again, they failed. And that also proved they didn't fail because they didn't follow the corporate governance. They were good corporate governance model, including Enron, even Satyam, even Berkshire Hathaway. And one article that I was reading, BH was consistently giving 22% dividend, and that for more than 3 decades. And it failed. So that raised these questions that, today's world, the governance is not merely towards earning profit. And if there is something wrong, later or sooner it will come out and will sink the business. And what anybody and everybody requires is assurance that how does this particular thing sustain. And this is where probably the dimensions were added. One was experts, what we call professionals. Second was the stakeholders were extended in not merely in economic terms, but then was considered the society also as a stakeholder. Social responsibility concept came, and now it's getting extended to environmental also. So this ultimately going to the same old concept where this is how we used to live and work, where we called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one and all. And the word AKAM, again, the one, I like this word. This again indicates unity. That originally our origin is one, and therefore we should be concerned. And if one is earning profit, it is not his profit. Profit has to be shared. So as soon as the concept of sharing comes in the business, this is how I think the corporate governance is evolving. And challenges to this particular thing and present day's scenario and looking towards the future is few things which we had never earlier experienced. One is technology. Technology is now changing on a daily basis. And this particular thing is making the pace of life is very fast. Another thing, new generation that is coming up, which is exposed to this technology, is again openly and very, I would say, dimensionally aggressive. They are again very fast. They want everything very quick. Their responses also very quick. So our governance should address these things. They take a benefit from these elements and simultaneously look for. Another thing our MOS indicated that we are having more and more number of regulators. Regulators are being seen as a solution to all problems. Or any problem comes up, you set up a regulator and think that particular thing, that is standardization and somebody to watch you. That will solve the problem. But, and he also used expression that you are a new form of thanedars. So this again we need to think that are we setting up another form of Inspector Raj? Are we increasing the compliance reporting or obligations on the corporate world? This is some sort of paradox or conflict between the two. What we say, one is the ease of doing business. Another thing is we want to regulate you. They have to be some sort of a complementary stream where the growth is being perceived and everybody is a contributor to growth. So third thing in this dimension, which is a challenge which I consider, is a new form of system is very much based on conflict resolution. IBC is a one form. Smaller contracts which will subsequently may come up as a major force in corporate world is another thing. We have to think that something which starts as a solution remains a solution. It doesn't get affected by volume or the requirement in the common undertaking of business. And this solution is not privy to some selected few. It is available to one and all, irrespective of your volume of business or scale of your operations. But solution is solution, and that everybody is right to it. We need to ensure it. Third thing which I see, that before a problem, so far our initiatives were response to problem. From now onwards, probably the time to response will be reducing because suppose the changes are taking fast. So the responses also need to be faster than the event takes place. And if we are unable to think and perceive and foresee a problem that is coming in, then probably we are raising a question to our own existence. So we need to address these issues, and I hope, and moreover, I think, I'm not claiming and trying to cover this topic technically because we have experts on this, and I'm also eager to listen to them. However, I only want to set the ball, give a perspective and set the ball rolling. And I thank you all for being here. And I now would like to listen to the winners also. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your chair address. It's very interesting the way sir has mentioned and picked up right from the ages, which is much more contemporary as well as a fundamental plight, celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, 75 years of independence. Because what lies as a big tenet of learning is our own Indian ways of doing business, which were much more inclusive, which were much more pragmatic, which were much more equity based. And that's what you beautifully indicated, and help us swiftly moving to a more formal body of knowledge, which now we all know as the domain of corporate governance, as to how ecosystem and regulation both are communicating with each other, learning from each other, and evolving day in, day out. The best message which I take from your talk, sir, is the concept of shared value creation and distribution, which lies at the center of corporate governance, and also the evolving concept of ESG. If we really imbibe it in spirit, not in letter, I strongly believe also that we will go beyond just reporting on these aspects. Rather, we would be able to create those standards which can get us the glory we were possessing long back in India. Now, with your kind permission, sir, I would like to, I'm very eager to hear from the young professionals who have contributed the essay and has been awarded as winners. So first of all, I would like to invite Mr. Samyak Sangvi. Mr. Samyak, can you please come over? And of course, the essay was allowed to be shared for 5,000 words, but I've requested them if they can briefly help us understand their thoughts on corporate governance, how it's going to evolve as per these young professionals for the new India, which is evolving and taking shape in 5 to 7 minutes maximum. Over to you. Yeah. Can the technical team please help us having the PPTs on the back screen?
In the meanwhile, I thank Dr. Gupta. You know, this is how I learn and how articulatedly he expressed what I said. I wish I could have said that well.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. It was very much inspiring here from you. Samay, can we begin, please? Ashish, can you please coordinate? We can have the PPTs on the screen. In the meantime, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, all the dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. First, and all the delegates to you. First of all, I am very much thankful and want to thank IICA for providing me this opportunity and inviting me over this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav iconic day, and also organizing this essay competition, All India Youth National Level Competition for Corporate Governance. So, yeah, the topic of the competition is the corporate governance evolving concept for the new India. So, as our chairman sir has rightly said, the India is known as a bird of gold, right? Not the golden bird. So, yeah, my theme of the essay was the same, that in the ancient India also, the ethics and all the things were more good, right? We can say that there is no corporate governance, or all this corporate governance concept is not a new concept or somewhat evolving concept. It is also mentioned in Vedas and Kautilya's Shastra. We can say that.
You can say next and they will change.
Yeah. So it is given in the Mahabharata, Ramayana, even in Jainism, Buddhism, everywhere this corporate governance thing or governance thing is mentioned very neatly, right? So what is actually the basic idea of the corporate governance? So the governance is an act of manner of governing and exercising the control or authority over the action of subject. And in the ancient India, if we can say that, I can quote the Kautilya's Shastra. So in the Kautilya's Shastra, what he said that the substitution of the state with the corporation, the king with the board of director or the CEO, we can say that, and the public with the shareholder, right? So we can connect those dots and we can say that, okay, oh, this concept is so old, like in 580 or like 500, 1,000-year old, right? So they are rightly mentioned, right? Next, please. Next slide. So I can say that the concept of corporate governance is in our DNA itself, but the what IICA needs to do, or what the dignitaries you all needs to do, just to revive that concept, just revive that DNA thing, right? So we have that thing. So, sir, next please, next to next slide, if you can do. Next slide, sir, please. Yes, sir, please show. Yeah. So, as appearing on your screen, right? So, in Kautilya's Arthashastra, there were four concepts: Raksha, Riddhi, Palna, and Yoga Kshema. So, if we can connect that with the today's concept of the responsibility, accountability, transparency, and fairness, right? So, like Raksha means to equated with the risk management concept and all that thing. Riddhi can be, we can say that the stakeholder value enhancement, shareholder, and all that thing, right? Palna, so it should be law in letter and in its spirit. And Yoga Kshema, we can say that corporate social responsibility and fairness, right? So yeah, this is the old terminology or ancient India's terminology and the new India's terminology. So one more thing that our secretary sir has mentioned that corporate governance is something about the ethics, transparency, and accountability. So it is not new, but the ancient thing only. But we are giving it the new cloth or new form as a corporate governance, right? Uh, Next. So yeah, why the corporate governance is important, why it is important in new India. So I think this slide and next slide, the Miss Nanni will cover in the detail, but I will give you the overview that in the need of the corporate governance has emerged because of the increasing concern about the non-compliance of standard, right? As sir has said, this youth generation, we need a very fast response, very fast growth. So we want already, okay, shortcut hai, okay, take that thing. Right. So there are somewhere we are lacking the thing of corporate governance, but we should need to overcome that thing. So sometimes takeover and merger, sometimes we can say that hostile takeover. If we this hostile takeover word is in news at the time of Twitter deal, if you must be knowing, right? So mismanagement and corruption, it is also very much there in this corporation somewhere. We can say that high salary CEO is taking very high salary and all that thing. Then the globalization link with the international market, like Indian companies are also listed on the international market. So we need to be at the global standard, at a like American standard. We can say that they are like very good at the corporate governance. So at the global level, right, we need to go. And efficiency of management. So we have already discussed that hostile takeover and all that thing we need to avoid, right? Next, please, sir. Yeah. So corporate governance and in importance, we can say that the corporate governance is directly connected with the risk mitigation and the compliance. Yeah, I can say that, okay, it is not directly connected with the shareholders value or shares price, but yeah, for risk mitigation and compliance, it has a direct linkage. But we can say that no, it cannot increase the shareholders value, but it can protect the shareholders value. That is why the corporate governance is important. Improved organizational efficiency and industrial compliances and all that thing crucial during the merger and takeover, because like fraud and all that we can see when we are going for the merger takeover, some cash deal and all that thing. So it is that. So at that time, this concept of corporate governance we can use. Next, please, sir. Yeah, challenges in the corporate governance. So the first point is the getting the board right. We need to do like, okay, board is doing the right thing. So if we can follow that honesty and all accountability, responsibility, all that rules, that ethics. So there is no need of corporate governance, I can say. So individual corporate governance, as I think our minister has mentioned that we need to individual corporate governance, then we can go for the corporate governance, right? So individual corporate governance is much more important. So to achieve the goal of the corporate excellence, right? The next is true independence of directors. So this we have already discussed. Accountability to stakeholder. Board must be accountable to stakeholder. That Palna, like the Kautilya's from Kautilya's Arthashastra. Yeah, the main important point I can say that is founders control and succession planning. In India, we are seeing that, okay, one generation, the next generation will take over the business and do the business. But yeah, the best should get the business. It should be the overall practice, not the next generation, but who is the best appropriate candidate for that position should get that business, right? So next, please. Yeah. So yeah, as we have discussed, corporate governance is somewhat unseen force. We can say that, okay, yeah, it is a hidden force which can enhance sometimes the share value, but always the protect the share value, right? So due to the lack of trust on the governance, investment sentiment go awry, resulting into a reduced market price. We know that thing. The approach must be that the perfect balance between the excessive stringency and too much flexibility. There should not be the robust compliance. Okay, ये तो करना ही है या तो ये तो नहीं करना. Like there should be the balance thing. So yeah, on the conclusive part, the concept of the corporate governance hinge on the total transparency, integrity, and accountability of the management and the board of directors. The corporate governance is a mean, not to the end. Corporate excellence should be the end. As someone has rightly said, right, that what is your brand? So your brand is the what people say about you when you are not in the room, right? It is quote of Jeff Bezos. One more example I want to share. Okay, what youth are like what we are seeing today, we are following that thing. I can give the example. I have met one government official recently, right? So I am in the meeting with him. He has got some phone call. He needs to send his car to pick up some his family or some relative or something like that. So like गाड़ी नहीं गई. So he called the secretary PPS and told that आप गाड़ी भेज दीजिए. He immediately called his PPS and told कि संजय ये जो खर्चा है वो मेरे पर्सनल अकाउंट में जाना चाहिए. So that like I was sitting on the other side, I am saying, okay, great, yaar. Matlab, that is the practice, that is the corporate governance. We can say that. So now, if the secretary is following that practice, so the full ministry we can say that okay, na, ye to karenge. So that we can say that that is the brand or that is the corporate governance. So as a youth, what we are seeing, we will follow. So it is something like legacy thing. We can say okay, what we get, we will follow. So thank you so much, all of you. Thank you for patience. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Samek, for your views. I take ethics as central of your thoughts, not just in letter, but in spirit. We need to assimilate the idea and demonstrate it widely because we learn from practice. Now, I would like to request Ms. Nandini Agrawal to please come over and share her thoughts in strictly in 5 minutes, please, because Nandini. She is the second prize winner of the essay competition. We have the third prize winner, Mr. Sartaj Singh. He is from Chandigarh, but because of some commitments, he could not join. So we'll have just two winners to listen from.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. Firstly, I would like to thank all the members of IICA for inviting me here, and I feel very happy that I was able to secure the second position in the IICA youth competition. First, so I begin with giving a glimpse of my essay. And firstly, I will begin with explaining the meaning of corporate governance. Corporate governance basically is the system by which the companies are directed and controlled. Corporate governance in India is a set of internal control, policies, and procedures which form the framework for the company's operations and its dealings with its stakeholders, such as customers, management, employees, industrial bodies. The board of directors are mainly responsible for the proper management and regulation of the company. As our chairman here also said that corporate governance is an increasing trend concept which will be able to expand further in India. And as the people are becoming more and more concerned about the regulation of corporates, in the upcoming times we can see more strict legislations which will be enforced. So corporate governance has evolved around certain key principles which form the base, a base for the rules and guidelines set for the corporates. I would like to highlight some of the basic principles of corporate governance. So first is transparency. Transparency is an essential component at all the levels of an entity, especially at the top level management, where major decisions are taken and major plans are formulated. Second is accountability. Accountability means a willingness or an obligation to accept responsibility for one's action. It gives the shareholders as well as the general public confidence that in case it leads to an unfavorable situation, the ones responsible are dealt with in an appropriate manner. The next is independence. I believe that independence is the most important principle of corporate governance. Since a company is an artificial legal entity, it all depends upon the board of directors, how they can act independently and how they can manage the company well. The fourth principle is social responsibility. This is an additional principle apart from the main principles which obligates the company to fulfill certain social demands and contribute positively to the society. Since a company uses the society's resources, it is the duty of the companies to contribute something positively to the society. So, I shall now give a brief summary about the evolution of corporate governance. As Neeraj Gupta sir has rightly said now, corporate governance has evolved in many stages. So, the initial phase of India's corporate governance was aimed at making the boards and audit committees much more transparent and independent. In 1996, CII, taking up the first institutional initiative, took a step towards corporate governance. It was followed by the report of Kumar Mangalam Birla on insider trading, introduction of Clause 49, report of the Consultative Group of Directors of Banks, report of Committee on Corporate Audit and Governance Committee, SEBI report on corporate governance, and post this, the second stage of corporate governance, which witnessed the introduction of class action suits. Essentiality of corporate governance has already been highlighted by Samyak, so I would like to add only some of the points like changing ownership structure. As we are witnessing that a company has shareholders from spread across multiple locations which differentiate in their views, ideas, and attitudes. So, in order to protect the rights of the investors, a practical implementation of rules and regulations through a conduct of corporate governance is required. And after this, one more point is that huge increase in the top management compensation. We are seeing that in the coming times, the remuneration of the directors are being increasing, and the top management is grabbing an exorbitant share of the company's revenue. So we need to regulate this, and I believe that a strong corporate governance is required in this sector. So, India also has a strong regulatory framework in place for the proper regulation and control of the corporates. These include the Companies Act 2013, Securities and Exchange Board of India, accounting standards issued by ICAI, secretarial standards issued by ICSI, standard listing agreement of stock exchanges. All these enactments try to provide the investors confidence and protect their interests. Corporate governance reforms have significant importance for India, which is moving towards a more transparent and accountable system of economic governance. India is among the first country to implement the mandatory corporate social responsibility, and this will also set precedents for other countries for strategic implementation of corporate responsibility policies. Corporate governance in India will be applicable in every company in the coming times with advanced modifications and policies. As we all know, the more the level of corporate governance, the more is the value of the company in the eyes of the shareholders. So, concluding my speech, I would like to say that the real onus of achieving the desired level of corporate governance lies in the proactive initiatives taken by the companies themselves and not on any external rules and regulations. Much more needs to be done for the entrenchment of good corporate governance standards, such as improving leadership. Indeed, there is a need for advocacy and awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandini. I would like to congratulate Samyak and Nandini, and also Sartaj, who is not present, for being the winner of this competition. Now, taking the transaction of this panel forward, we have with us Professor Bhattacharya. After the chair setting the tone and after hearing from these two young scholars, there are multiple areas which have been pointed out during these three speeches. What I understand personally in corporate governance ecosystem, especially for the new India and the new developments which are taking place, the boards are becoming more sensitive and focused on building their capacities, deliberating on the issues which are gradually taking the front seat from what they were on the back seat, especially strategy, risk management, developing resilience, competency, skill orientation of the board, diversity of the board are again some of the issues which are taking a big shift. As far as the key institutions are concerned, that is the directors in the board, there is much which is being talked about on both executive and independent positions and their significant role in the boards for having that sort of leadership within the company, which, as one of the participants has said, could lead us to the corporate excellence. Yet there are some new areas, as the chair has also indicated, towards the evolving areas of artificial intelligence, technology, the fast pace of changes which are being realized and impacting the way corporates operate and the way they are impacting the business models, again, is something which has taken centrality to the discussions of corporate governance. Much is being done, yet there is a lot could be done if we really want to help pace up with the speed of development of corporate growth in the country. Professor Bhattacharya has extensive experience in this area, and I'm sure an experienced person can only chart out the vision for the future as to what has been done could be assessed as well as what is yet to be done so that we leave with this panel some key thoughts in your mind where we can further work upon and contribute wherever and however we are contributing to the system. Professor Bhattacharya, please.
Mr. Dhariwal, Professor Gupta, my friends, good afternoon to all of you. Today we are here to discuss that how corporate governance can really take us forward from here to New India. That is the focus of today's discussion. We are now talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. So first of all, what is the India we are dreaming of when we talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat? And then we can discuss about how corporate governance is important to achieve that goal. Unless we are clear about what is the dream we are dreaming about the India's future, for example, 20 years, 25 years from hence, or 20 years from hence, we shall not be able to understand why corporate governance is important for all of us. What is this Atmanirbhar Bharat we are talking about? Is it that we are going back to protectionism, which were there when India became independent? Then it was command economy. The economy was closed, consumers were short-shifted, and there was no competition. It was licensed, and then you can do whatever you want to do. Of course, that was needed at that time. But then we have changed. From 1990, we are an open economy. And therefore, perhaps we are not trying to say, when we are saying vocal for global means, that purchase only Swadeshi. No. That was pre-independence area, much needed to get independence. But today we are not in that situation. We are not saying, when we say vocal for local, does not mean we are propagating that if we are producing defense goods, then the component should be Indian component. That is not happening, not that is desirable. Then what is the Atmanirbhar Bharat we are talking about? It is the Bharat we are talking about where we should be self-reliant, self-sufficient, and we shall hold a position in the globe when people will say, this is a product from India and therefore it is reliable. In a competitive world, we have to produce product that is reliable and also which is competitive. So Atmanirbhar Bharat does not mean that we shall stop competition here. But it is one aspect of it when we are talking about business. But there are other aspects of Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is inclusion. We want a Bharat, we dream for a Bharat, we dream for India, where there will be no discrimination, whether economic or social, and everyone will get their fundamental rights to enforce, particularly education, health, and food. And that is what we are talking about, Atmanirbhar Bharat. If that is the dream of our India, then why corporate governance is important here and how it can play its own role. Now we know that when we look at the business as a whole, then it is the second most important institution after the government and most powerful institution which can bring changes in the society. And if it can bring the changes, that is the corporate, the business, then it has to play its role in transforming India from which is today to the India that we are dreaming now, which will be India after 20 years, 25 years, or even 10 years, if we can accelerate it. Now, therefore, are we talking about corporate social responsibility? Are we talking about ESG? If we follow that, does it mean that I have contributed, the business has contributed enough to transform this India into new India? May not be. I don't really talk about corporate social responsibility. Rather, I will prefer to talk about corporate social irresponsibility. Responsibility and irresponsibility, two continuum. And therefore, we cannot expect that one will be on the one end of the continuum or rather at the other end of the continuum. It is somewhere in between. Therefore, when we talk about today about the corporate social irresponsibility, we are saying that please don't do anything which will hurt the society, which will destroy the social value. Therefore, we come back to the very basic question. What is the goal of a corporate? What is the goal of a company? Is it creating shareholder value? If I say the answer is no, perhaps I am wrong. If I say the answer is yes, then too I am wrong. Because after all, whom we are sitting here and the investors, they look forward for return of the capital and return on the capital. So unless and until the business says that we shall return your capital and we shall give a return on your capital, the investment will not flow to the corporate sector and therefore the corporate will not grow, the economic productivity of the resources will not be there. And therefore, we need to say that, the business has to say that yes, we shall return your capital and we shall also give you a reasonable return on the capital. But can that be the goal? The answer is no, that cannot be the goal. And I must say that that was never be the goal. Because we have seen over the years, over centuries, that only those companies survive which not only perform in absolute terms, but which perform in relative terms. If you can't perform in relative terms, someone will take your place and will elbow you out. This is capitalism. We are not talking about, let us go back to socialism. We are not saying that. We are saying that there should be capitalism. There is capitalism. But in the capitalism, there will be competition and the motivation for success and survival would also be there. So we are saying that yes, there is a need for greed, but controlled greed we are talking about. We are saying that yes, you have to give a return to investors and return of the capital, but not by hook or by crook. You have to look at the aspiration of the society and then you have to act accordingly. Then you have to see that you are meeting the aspiration of the society and that is how you are surviving. And therefore, the dream we are talking about, the dream the government is now saying that this is our dream of Atmanirbhar Bharat, We should ask, is it the dream of the whole of the society? I must say yes. It is a kind of motivation, kind of dream, kind of aspiration that the society has. And if that is so, can business ignore that? The answer is obviously not. Therefore, whatever corporate structure and relationship we talk about, but the goal should be to meet the aspiration of the country, to meet the aspiration of the society. We know that how business really make money. They make money and they will continue to make money. They make money by innovating new products, new methods, and selling it at a price which is lower than the cost. That means they meet certain needs of the society. And we have also talked about long back, not only corporate social responsibility, bottom of the pyramid. That is also business. That means you can sell goods at the bottom of the pyramid and you can make money. So making money is nothing wrong about it. But what is wrong about it is that when you behave irresponsibly. So now what we are trying to say, for example, when we talk about the Facebook or we talked about LinkedIn, is it really spreading the hate? If it is a socially irresponsible behavior. If it is not providing safety to the local community around, then it is irresponsible behavior. If it is producing certain products which is of not of value to the kids, rather dangerous, it is again irresponsible behavior. So now we are saying not to corporate to become alert. We are saying the society to become alert. It is not the regulator because government alone cannot do anything. Even if there is intention, I recall that when I was young, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, whatever name was there, it was not a full-fledged ministry, the control was the key. Now we are saying that ministry is the facilitator, not the controller. So there is a difference between control, facilitation, and therefore ministry can only facilitate. Ministry cannot have, the government cannot have the capacity to really look at all the aspects of the corporate business, how they are being performed. And therefore, it is the business's responsibility, it is the responsibility of every citizen to see that the company is not destroying value. And that is the key in corporate governance. The three pillars of corporate governance are, as my young friends have said, transparency, equity, accountability. So when we say equity, earlier we used to say, who are the stakeholders? Who can impact the company? They are the stakeholders without which support, whose support, the business cannot really survive and grow. But then a new definition came in 1980s when the stakeholder theory came, and it says that everyone is a legitimate stakeholder if he or she or the group is impacting or getting impacted by the business. Therefore, everyone who is getting impacted is a legitimate stakeholder. And if you look at the Companies Act, what it says that the board of directors, rather directors will act in the interest of the company. So company is not shareholders, that is the first point. Company has many stakeholders and in the interest of the shareholders, the community, the employees and environment. And therefore it is saying that it should act prudently. We also as individuals, we live in the society to achieve our own goal. But what a prudent person does, it doesn't hurt the interest of others. And therefore, the law of torts has really come to play and say that you live, but let others live. That is the basic mission of corporate. And we have talked a lot about the literature, structure, a lot about the relationship, but they have to be followed in the spirit. And I believe that corporate has to go beyond the boundaries established by the law. And they say that we shall transgress little more to see that the aspiration of the country is achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for guiding and inspiring us with your thoughts, which are filled purely with your experience and working in this area. If I place my efforts in summarizing what you have said in one or two lines, I must say, for a new India, the concept of corporate governance needs to be imbibed and envisioned by the corporate sector in a new manner, which does not only revolve around transparency, accountability, and integrity, but also has fervors of nationality, focusing what the country desires and aspires, what the society requires to have a more inclusive corporation, then only we will not just be addressing to the mantra and the challenge of being Atmanirbhar, that is self-reliant, but also would be that enthusiastic to stretch going even beyond what regulators are expecting us to do in their facilitator role. So thank you so much, sir, for a very interesting insight. Dear friends, I don't want to hold you back. There are so many issues, and our panel is really distinguished, filled with so much of experience and thought leadership on the subject we can learn from. So with underlining what the chair has said, to have more inclusive corporate governance, more country-centric ethos to be focused to have the glory back, and mixing with the thoughts of Professor Bhattacharya, I would like to close this panel and break for the lunch. But before, I would request IICA team to help us with the mementos for our distinguished panelists. First, for the chair, Mr. Dhariwal, please. Thank you, sir. Can I have a memento for Professor Bhattacharya, please? आगे आ जाइए.
You all are requested to kindly proceed for lunch, please. We will be gathering in another 45 minutes in the same hall for the technical session being chaired by Madam Anita Shah Akila. Thank you so much.